You may have heard about Scotty Allen from Strange Parts, who built his own iPhone 6s from spare parts in China. Today, I'm going to show you how refurbished phone could be a business, and I'll give you my analysis of this business case and my own experience and how you can build your own iPhone. So what Scotty Allen did here is that he made his own refurbished iPhone. He used only spare parts and he assembled it himself with just a bag of screws and a few screwdrivers. He managed to successfully do it. So it may be possible for you to do it yourself.
Today is the day I get to try and put together the phone. I think I have everything I need, I'm not sure, so let's give it a shot.
So what happened at the beginning of the summer this year, 2017, a few clients were asking, well, do you have any iPhones to sell? And I sometimes have, phones that some people would sell to me used, and I just change the screen and then resell it. But they wanted an iPhone that looked really like new. So most phones, once they're used, well, they won't be perfect on the outside. So you'll have pretty used corners, or sometimes, they're not perfect. So they were asking for perfectly new phones, but at still a lower price, just by changing the back part, the battery cover, and the screen, and the battery. Well, you could have a pretty much new iPhone. The thing is, well, I couldn't meet the demand. Too many people were asking for it. So I had to find a solution. I started looking for spare parts. Well, as a mobile phone repair center, I already had my own suppliers, but I usually bought screens and batteries. Most common repairs I do. So I never really bought cameras, or, well, GSM antennas, or any, other part. So I asked my suppliers if they had any, and they sold them. So you could mostly buy used cameras, like this one. This is an iPhone 5s camera. It's used, but it works perfectly. It was manufactured by Apple's factories, and it works perfectly. The few biggest parts for a phone are usually, the screen, the battery cover, which is usually made of aluminum for the latest models, and the battery. You'll find out that there are a lot more important parts than you think, as just the dock connector. This is from an iPhone 6s, you still have the jack. You'll have all the buttons on the sides, so here you can see power button, also linked to the flash on the iPhone 6, and the 2 volume buttons on the separate flex cable. You'll have vibrator, you'll have loudspeaker, antennas, of course cameras, and a ton of other little metal parts that you've never really seen on your phone because they're inside, and you're not sure what they're used for. So once I was sure that my supplier could supply with all of these parts, that I could either buy new, just a generic version, like this is an iPhone 6s generic charging flex, and this is an iPhone 7 Plus generic LCD, which is usually the parts we use for repairs. The actual demand from a client that just broke his iPhone is, could you repair this phone for the lowest price as possible? But I just want it to work. So what I propose usually is, do you want an original screen? And, you'll pay a pretty high price, but you'll have an original screen manufactured from Foxconn. Or you can just get a generic screen, like from Tianma, and it'll work perfectly fine, but it's still a generic screen. Also, what got interesting here is that I could pretty much get any color part I wanted, and I've had some special demands, like, what about a golden iPhone with a black screen? It appeared it was just beautiful. What about an iPhone 7 Plus with a red back cover? but a black screen. Well, I don't have any more now, but a few clients asked for this, and if you remember, Dax from Jerry Rig Everything, MKBHD, and also Everything Apple Pro all made videos about this iPhone 7 Red edition that wasn't looking that good in white. And the most common problem they had is that if they wanted a black button on here, they had to swap motherboards with another iPhone. Because the Touch ID, which is integrated into the home button, it's just like this, well, it can be dissociated from a motherboard. So if you just change the screen and change the Touch ID, well, it won't work on your phone. Also, I could have any color, well, buttons. I could have any color charging port. Here I have two silver ones. I could even have, well, exotic colors for the battery cover. I could maybe have matte black for even an iPhone 6. I could propose different levels of quality. If a customer wanted a phone, a nice phone for the lowest price possible, well, I would get all the parts, well, generic parts, a lot cheaper than on the original. At the time, an iPhone 7 Plus LCD was about, well, 5 times the price an original than for a generic one. Now, the hardest part here was finding motherboards, because you can have all the parts, but if you don't have a working motherboard, you can't make a phone. So I looked a very long time looking for a motherboard supplier, and after a few hours and maybe about 50 different contacts in China, I finally found one. It had some pretty decent pricing, and they had pretty much any version you wanted for any phone. They even had some Samsung phones or Xiaomi. And so I could offer to my clients, well, do you want an iPhone 6s with only 64 gigs of RAM? And if you don't want the Touch ID on it because it's not a feature you're using all day, well, it's cheaper because the supplier offered versions without the Touch ID or with it. So then I've had some orders, and so I bought motherboards and parts. So I got them, and the first mistake I made was ordering the cheapest boards. They were only from Sprint, and if you check on Apple's website, I'll put the link in the description, they can tell you exactly which model of motherboard is compatible with the carriers and your location. In the States you have two models. You have a model for China, and you have a model for Europe, and you pretty much have a global model too. So for every phone you have between 2 and 5 different models. So you have to know exactly which one you need to buy. So I just sent them back, and they sent me new motherboards, and everything was working well. I assembled the whole phone, sold the phone, everything was good. I also bought for my customers a used box, and I put in, well, OEM phone charger with a phone cable and OEM earpods. So they feel like they were buying a brand new phone, but they perfectly knew it was refurbished, because that's what I was selling, a refurbished phone. So they were paying maybe a little higher price than what they would buy on a used store, but it was still so much cheaper than buying a brand new iPhone. So I sold phones, refurbished phones, for the whole summer, and I now know exactly which problems you can have doing this kind of business. First of all, the motherboards you're going to get are all refurbished motherboards, and most of them had a previous problem and was refurbished very professionally in China. But sometimes they'll still have a little problem. I've had a few phones that would just turn off all by themselves at 20-25%, even though the battery was brand new. Or other phones, that would have a problem with getting a good signal. And so I had to send a few motherboards back. It costs shipping fees every time. Another problem I had was trying to save some time by asking my supplier to send me the battery covers pre-assembled with well, the speaker, the charging flex, the vibrator, and all the little metal brackets for the screen. And I also asked them to pre-assemble the earpiece and the big metal shield on the iPhone LCDs. And that was a mistake because a lot of problems with, well, the buttons weren't clicking as well and the screws would loosen after a while. So every time I received a new battery cover, I had to check every screws personally, and I had some phones come back from clients and I had to re-screw all the screws, and it was really a loss of time. So I finally bought, well, empty battery covers, and I would assemble myself all the small little brackets, which, well, it takes some time, but at least you have a finished product that's perfect. Also, another problem I encountered, if you remember on iOS 11, when it just got out, 11.0, well, the iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Pluses, and even a few iPhone 6S's, well, the LCD had a problem on generic LCDs where the digitizer would not work as well because, well, it had an incompatibility with the, well, the IC chip that's been located on the, well, on the screen. So I've had some really unhappy clients telling me, well, your phone doesn't work anymore, and I could have never, well, known that Apple would release an update that wouldn't work with generic LCDs anymore. And that's when I said, well, by selling phones, refurbished phones with an original screen with it, well, I could prevent all that. So I stopped selling phones with generic screens on them. Also, one of the problems with this is that you basically get all the screws in a small bag, and most of the screws are different, as you know if you've already opened an iPhone. So you have to know exactly where which screw goes, because if you put a long screw like in a motherboard, exactly here, well, you'll damage the motherboard and it won't be usable anymore. So you just lost the motherboard and possibly a few €100. So if you don't know enough about iPhone building and assembling, well, don't do it, because you'll just put the wrong screws and the wrong emplacements and you'll damage your parts, and especially the motherboards, and lose a ton of money. So in the bigger picture, having a business of refurbished phones is very profitable, but you have to find a very, very reliable motherboard supplier, which is the most important part of your phone. If you only use either original OEM used parts or OEM refurbished parts, like OEM refurbished LCDs are great, and it's a great alternative to very pricey original LCDs. So if you use good parts and very well tested motherboards, I think this can be a really good business. And also, instead of buying a new phone that has to be well, manufactured by a factory and pollute, well, you're basically recycling phones, and this is a really good thing. If you start such a business, you have to also, well, you'll pay customs tax every time you receive parts. And you'll have shipping fees that are pretty high if you ship by DHL or UPS from China. And you'll sometimes have some non-working parts. I've had a few times where I had to return the camera, or in my package it was missing either an antenna or it was damaged flex or something like that, and you can lose a lot of time. So I've had a little piece of advice to give you, is order more of these small parts that don't cost much. Order a lot, maybe 5 for each model, so you can be sure that if anything goes wrong, if you break a small part because they're really fragile, well, you'll have one, and you don't have to tell your customer, well, I have to wait for my contact in China to send me new parts and it's going to take another whole week. So if you were going to start such a business, I would recommend that you always propose all the different options to your clients, as using original parts or not. But you can make really great phones and beautiful iPhones. Here are 3 iPhone 7 Pluses. I'll show in my next video how to assemble them, and then you'll know everything, and you can do it yourselves and assemble your own phones. If you have any comment or any question, please let me know in the comment section below. I'll put all the links in my description for any useful website, and I'll release the whole video very soon. Please stay tuned.